something a little bit different for today. And I very much love studying philosophy and religion, the Bible, and took a moment. Also, very much enjoy what this is right here. Is I want to thank Adobe, Adobe Audition. I've been working with Adobe since the mid '80s. So it's amazing what they have done. They do a lot of things, and we can talk about that later. This is called Adobe Audition, and I use this to do a voiceover. What this thing over here is a noise gate and some all that, and this is a monophonic track, and this is I'll let you just follow along. This is on my little bitty laptop that I got from around the corner. I'll put a link about this. This is based on our youth pastor got asked to fill in for our regular pastor, and he did a thing about salt and light. I will try to put a link to that, but this is because I wanted to be a chemist, and I realized that chemistry was anyway. I'll just play this and let's see what you got. Hope you love it.
I'd like to talk to you about nitrogen. Nitrogen is a chemical element, the symbol N and the atomic number 7. Nitrogen is a nonmetal, and it is, interestingly, the lightest member of the group 15 of the periodic table, which is often called the pnictogens. I think I said that right. It is a very, very common element in our universe. It's estimated at being 7th in total abundance. It's interesting that it's the 7th, and it also is 7th in total abundance in the Milky Way. I don't know how we know that. Our solar system has a lot of nitrogen. And at our standard temperature, around here on planet Earth, and the pressure about 32 psi, what tends to happen is nitrogen, two atoms, they're kind of lonely, these two nitrogen critters, and they just form a bond. So you got N2. That's a colorless, odorless diatomic gas. Interestingly for me, nitrogen, although it forms about 78% of the air that you breathe, you think it's oxygen, but you get about every time you take a breath, you get about 78% of what you're breathing in is nitrogen. There's an interesting thing about that. Nitrogen is rather a volatile compound. However, it is relatively rare in the solid parts of this world that we live in. Nitrogen. Nitrous oxide makes me laugh. Why? Because nitrous oxide is laughing gas. And recently, we had our youth pastor sit in for our our pastor, and he talked about salt of the earth and light, that you are the salt and the light. And he talked about, I've never really thought about this, but it really made a lot of sense. And I want to compare notes with him on some of this, because he said that salt is a preservative. Three things primarily that salt, when it says in Matthew 5:13, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its flavor, with what will it be salted? It is then good for nothing, but to be cast out and trodden under the feet of men. Interesting. I live in Kentucky, and Salt Lick and Big Bone Lick State Park, these things, a salt lick was salt was absolutely crucial for survival of buffalo animals before a lot of people even, anyway, the Indians and all that. But here in Kentucky, there are a lot of salt licks. We can discuss later how these came to be. What was salt useful for? Why was it such a treasured commodity in ancient history? It goes way, way, way back because I guess before they had refrigerators, any time you had some meat, like if you had a buffalo, that's a whole bunch of meat, and you want to preserve that meat. If you had salt and you rubbed salt deep into that meat, you could preserve that meat. The salt stopped the decay. Very interesting part of the equation. Salt, sodium chloride primarily. There are a lot of other chemical salts, which when Brother Bobby was talking about this, he said another use for salt was for flavor. To add salt brings out the flavor. It enhances, or it does. It sits on the tongue. It makes the tongue react more to these chemical responses, and so that when you salt your pork, you will. I really don't do as much salt because we definitely get enough salt in most modern processed foods, which I try to avoid. However, I digress. So sodium chloride and what these salts, sea salt, all these different salts have, they're not just a single compound, they are multiple compounds. So magnesium chloride, that's Epsom salts, not as good for eating. It's not poisonous, it's not toxic, I believe. And hey, I'm not a chemist. I wanted to be, but I'm not. Sodium chloride, magnesium chloride, ammonium chloride. What's interesting about these salts is that any of the two elements by themselves, you wouldn't find or want to put those into your body without them binding together. Sodium on its own, which is, you don't find that in nature, but sodium on its own, if you throw pure sodium in the water, it will burn. It will bond. It has a voracious appetite, and it will grab those oxygen molecules and it will burn on top of the water. And magnesium, also a very reactive element. But magnesium chloride, sodium chloride, ammonium chloride. Ammonia, I don't think you'd want to do that, or chlorine, these things like that. The third thing that Bobby brought up was that salt, and referencing back to that salt in the Matthew, where was I there? But Matthew 5:13, I believe it was, that ammonium nitrate is a salt. That is fertilizer. So when he was talking salt, when I grew up, you would put salt on your tomato, right? When you eat your tomato. But if you threw salt on the tomato plant, it would kill. But I didn't realize at the time when Bobby was talking about this that ammonium nitrate, so I'll go back to the nitrogen, but when ammonia bonds with nitrogen, ammonium nitrate, it is fertilizer. And strangely enough, I shouldn't mention this, but I will, but ammonium nitrate is also a primary ingredient in gunpowder. So ammonium nitrate, don't try this trick at home, kids. I'm going to come back to this, but I just wanted to follow up with some of the things that Brother Bobby inspired me, and I wanted to compare notes with some of the salt of the earth, and we'll get to the light. Thank you for listening.